It was just before dawn when the alarm sounded. The Philippine Coast Guard's radar screens glowed with a cluster of contacts. 41 Chinese vessels had been detected moving in formation in the West Philippine Sea. This was not a routine patrol, not a silent drift of boats. This was a display, bold and unmistakable. Phones rang in Manila's defense command centers. Government officials convened emergency meetings. The news broke across the city. Massive Chinese flotilla detected off Philippine waters. Television anchors struggled to keep up with the updates, their voices tense. Social media exploded with images and satellite maps, hashtags like West Philippine Sea and Protect PH trending within minutes. International newsrooms picked up the story. This was more than a local issue. It was a global flashpoint. The question on everyone's mind: what was China trying to say, and how would the Philippines respond? The details soon emerged, sending ripples of concern through the region and beyond. It wasn't just a handful of ships, there were 41 vessels clustered together, a number that immediately raised eyebrows among analysts and officials. These ships weren't all of the same kind either. The flotilla was a mix of different types, each with its own distinct role and appearance. Among the group, several gray-hulled PLA Navy warships stood out, bristling with antennas, radar domes, and heavy weaponry. Clear symbols of military might. Interspersed with them were the large, imposing white ships of the China Coast Guard, their decks lined with uniformed officers standing at attention, ready to enforce their orders. But the most numerous by far were the blue and white fishing boats belonging to China's maritime militia. These vessels moved in tight, disciplined formation, their coordination hinting at military-style organization. Each type of vessel had a specific purpose, working together as part of a larger strategy. The PLA Navy ships projected hard military power, their presence a clear message of strength and deterrence. The Coast Guard vessels, meanwhile, enforced what China considers its maritime laws, patrolling assertively and making their authority known. The so-called fishing boats, though officially civilian, were in reality organized and directed by China's government, blurring the line between civilian and military operations. This was no random gathering. It was a carefully choreographed show of force, a deliberate display meant to send a message to anyone watching. Philippine patrol boats kept their distance, shadowing the flotilla and monitoring every move, wary of provoking a confrontation, but determined not to back down. Over the radio, tense warnings and demands crackled back and forth, each side asserting its claims and intentions. The Chinese vessels, however, ignored the warnings, maintaining their course with unwavering resolve, as if daring anyone to challenge them. Nearby, Filipino fishermen watched the unfolding scene with growing anxiety. They knew from experience that such encounters could quickly escalate, threatening their livelihoods and safety, and leaving them uncertain about what might come next. This was not a normal day in the West Philippine Sea. The presence of 41 Chinese vessels marked a sharp escalation. It sent shockwaves not only through Manila, but also across the region. The world was watching, and for good reason. International law is clear about state sovereignty and the rules of the sea. The United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS, sets boundaries. The Philippines has exclusive rights to its waters, including fishing and resource extraction. China's flotilla tested these lines, and by doing so, it challenged the very idea of international order. For the Philippines, this was about more than territory. It was about dignity, rights, and survival. For the world, the incident showed how fragile peace can be when big powers flex their muscles in contested spaces. To understand the threat, you have to know the players. First, the PLA Navy. These are China's warships, fast, heavily armed, and packed with technology. They rarely get this close to Philippine waters in such numbers. Their presence was a warning. Second, the China Coast Guard. These ships look like police boats, but they are huge, some bigger than destroyers. They are used to intimidate, blockade, and sometimes even ram other vessels. Their job is to enforce China's claims and send a message that Beijing is in control. Third, the maritime militia. This is the most misunderstood group. Officially, they are fishermen. In reality, they are organized, trained, and sometimes armed by the Chinese government. They swarm disputed areas, outnumbering local boats and establishing a constant presence. It's tempting to see these vessels as harmless. After all, fishing boats don't look threatening, but appearances are deceiving. Each fishing boat in the Chinese militia fleet is a tool of state policy. They are deployed strategically, not randomly. When these boats show up in large numbers, they crowd out others. They block access, shadow local fishermen, and call in the Coast Guard if challenged. Sometimes, They even help build artificial islands by bringing in supplies and materials. Their mission is to change facts on the water, one day at a time. Calling them just fishermen misses the point. These vessels are part of China's strategy. They create a sense of inevitability, a slow, creeping occupation. For the Philippines, every new flotilla means another piece of the sea is slipping away. How does China manage to expand its control and influence in the West Philippine Sea without ever firing a single shot or launching a direct attack? The answer lies in what experts call gray zone tactics, subtle, calculated moves that fall short of open warfare but still shift the balance of power. To understand this, let's use a simple analogy. Imagine you own a driveway in a quiet neighborhood. It's clearly your property, and everyone knows it. One day, your neighbor casually parks a couple of trucks on your driveway, acting as if it's no big deal. You protest, but your neighbor just shrugs, pretending not to understand your concern, or simply ignoring you. The following week, he brings in even more trucks, slowly filling up your space. Soon, his workers start setting up tents, putting up fences, and making themselves comfortable, as if they belong there. He never confronts you directly or uses force, but little by little, your driveway is no longer yours. It's being taken over, step by step, right in front of your eyes. This is exactly what's happening in the West Philippine Sea, just on a much larger and more complex scale. China uses its Coast Guard and maritime militia ships to push boundaries, testing the limits and seeing how far they can go without triggering a major conflict. Each move is small, almost insignificant on its own, too minor to justify a military response, but each one slowly changes the reality on the ground, or in this case, at sea. This strategy is sometimes called a slow-motion invasion, because it happens gradually, almost imperceptibly, until the new status quo is established. Over time, what was once your territory now feels like theirs. The new normal becomes China's presence, not yours. Gray zone tactics are incredibly difficult to counter, because they operate in the space between peace and war. They avoid outright violence, making it tricky for the other side to justify a strong response or rally international support. But the impact is very real. Territory, rights, and resources are chipped away, step by step, until what was once yours is now under someone else's control. The Philippines' claim to the West Philippine Sea is based on international law. The key treaty is UNCLOS, signed by most countries in the world, including China. UNCLOS gives the Philippines an exclusive economic zone stretching 200 nautical miles from its coast. Within this zone, the Philippines has the right to fish, drill, and manage resources. In 2016, an international tribunal in The Hague ruled in favor of the Philippines. The court declared China's sweeping 9-line claim, covering almost the entire South China Sea, had no legal basis. China rejected the ruling, but the decision stands in the eyes of the world. This is the heart of the conflict. For Manila, it's about law and justice. For Beijing, it's about history and power. Each new flotilla is a test of which principle will win. While governments argue, it's ordinary people who suffer most. Filipino fishermen have worked these waters for generations. Now many are afraid to go out, some have been chased, their catches stolen or destroyed, others have seen their boats rammed or blocked from traditional fishing grounds. Fishing is more than a job in these coastal communities. It's a way of life. The sea provides food, income, and identity. When Chinese ships crowd them out, families go hungry. Small businesses close. Young people leave for the city, breaking up tight-knit villages. The stakes are not just economic, they are cultural and national. Every lost catch, every abandoned boat, is a blow to the Philippines' pride and future. Faced with this challenge, Manila has not stood still. The Philippine government, recognizing the gravity of the situation, has mobilized its resources and leadership to respond decisively. Officials have convened emergency meetings, strategizing on both immediate actions and long-term plans to safeguard the nation's interests. The government has stepped up patrols, sending more ships and planes to monitor the area. Coast Guard and Navy vessels now maintain a near-constant presence, while surveillance flights keep a watchful eye on every movement in the contested waters. These efforts are not just about defense, they are a signal of resolve, a message that the Philippines will not yield its territory without a fight. They have turned to diplomacy, filing protests and speaking out in global forums. Filipino diplomats have worked tirelessly, raising the issue at the United Nations and engaging with foreign counterparts to build a coalition of support. Each diplomatic note and public statement is part of a broader campaign to assert the country's rights under international law. Transparency is now a weapon, sharing photos, videos, and data to rally international support. By exposing the reality on the ground, Manila hopes to win hearts and minds abroad. Allies have taken notice, and the world's media is paying closer attention to the unfolding events. The United States has backed the Philippines, sending its own ships to the region and promising help if things escalate. This partnership is rooted in a decades-old alliance, and Washington's presence is meant to deter further aggression. Joint exercises and intelligence sharing have deepened military cooperation, signaling that Manila is not alone. Japan and Australia have joined in joint patrols. Their navies now work side by side with Filipino forces, demonstrating a shared commitment to freedom of navigation and regional stability. These partnerships are growing stronger, with new agreements and coordinated patrols becoming more frequent. ASEAN neighbors have voiced concern, though some are cautious not to anger China. The risks are real. While unity is difficult, the stakes have prompted even the most hesitant countries to speak up, recognizing that the outcome will affect the entire region's security and prosperity. If the world ignores this slow-motion invasion, China's tactics could become the new normal, not just here, but everywhere. The precedent set in the West Philippine Sea could embolden similar actions in other contested regions, undermining international norms and the rule of law. If pushback turns to confrontation, the region could face dangerous escalation. A single miscalculation or provocation could spark a conflict with far-reaching consequences, drawing in major powers and threatening the peace that has underpinned Asia's growth. There is still hope for diplomacy, but compromise seems far off. Three futures are possible, each with its own risks and opportunities. The choices made now will echo for generations. First, China's presence becomes routine, and the Philippines loses control of its waters. Filipino fishermen may find themselves shut out, and the nation's sovereignty eroded bit by bit, with little recourse left. Second, international pushback grows, raising the risk of a clash. As more countries get involved, the potential for misunderstanding and escalation increases, making the situation even more volatile. Third, a diplomatic breakthrough, unlikely but not impossible, brings compromise and shared management. Such an agreement would require trust, creativity, and the willingness of all parties to put peace above pride. This is not only Manila's fight. Ordinary Filipinos have taken to the streets, demanding action and showing the world that national sovereignty matters to every citizen. It is a test for the international system, for the rule of law, and for the rights of small nations everywhere. The outcome will reveal whether global institutions can protect the vulnerable and uphold justice in the face of power. The world should be watching. Every development is a lesson in how the international community responds to aggression and defends the principles it claims to cherish. What happens in the West Philippine Sea will shape the future of Asia and beyond. The choices made here will ripple across oceans, influencing the balance of power and the fate of nations for years to come.